Thank you for the love and support shown to our entire family during this difficult time. We believe that each person has the power to make a difference through kindness and compassion. Around Easter, King Charles made a surprising discovery that shocked everyone at Buckingham Palace. Join us as we share the incredible story of Maid Elena and the moment that changed everything in the royal household. Buckingham Palace is often thought to hide many secrets. Behind its gleaming gates and tall walls, there are things the outside world never sees. Most believe it's just fancy dinners and important guests with glasses of fine wine. And while there's some truth to that, there's also another side. Inside, a hidden world exists, made up of staff who clean, cook, serve, and keep the palace running smoothly without ever being noticed. One of these staff members was a maid named Elena. Among the royal maids, Elena was different from the rest. According to close sources, she rarely spoke. She kept quiet in the staff kitchen and only did what was needed. Most maids had nicknames, but Elena was known simply as the Quiet One. She kept to herself, did her work, and moved quietly through the palace. People hardly paid any attention to her, but everything changed one day. It all started on a Wednesday afternoon during a busy royal visit. Several international guests were arriving for a meeting with King Charles. The visit brought extra work and stress to the palace. Elena was assigned to clean a guest parlor where visitors waited. She tidied up the room, arranged fresh flowers, and set the tea tray perfectly. The other maids had already left. Elena was dusting the shelves when she heard voices from down the hall. A group of men in dark suits and traditional clothes from different countries entered. Some spoke in English, but most did not. They were speaking quickly and sharply. Elena could understand some words, but didn't react. The visitors were trying to speak to the staff and King Charles, but no one understood them. It was clear a translator was needed, but the royal translator was missing. No one knew where he had gone. The staff grew anxious quietly as a diplomat from China tried to ask for something, but no one understood what he was saying. A man from Egypt struggled to explain himself in broken English. Another man from France tried to help, but made things worse. The palace staff aren't trained for this kind of situation. They can carry trays and clean windows, but no one expects them to step into a room full of diplomats and clear up an international misunderstanding. The room was filled with nervous laughter and awkward glances. Then, something unexpected happened. Elena, who was still holding and adjusting her teacup, stepped in to interpret what the Chinese diplomat meant. When she translated, everyone froze. The Chinese diplomat looked at her with surprise and respect. He quickly responded, asking about the schedule and whether he should take off his shoes before entering a room. Elena answered smoothly, explaining the customs of the palace. "Are you surprised? That was just the start. Keep watching to see what happens next." One of the French diplomats, curious, asked Elena something in French. Without hesitation, she replied clearly and naturally, as if she had spoken French her entire life. Even the guards outside peeked in to see what was happening. The staff stood silent in shock. The other maids crowded by the door, mouths open. The conversation switched languages, flowing effortlessly, as if it was normal. At that moment, King Charles himself walked by. He was on his way to greet the guests, with two advisors close behind. From the hallway, he heard voices in many languages. That was common at the palace. It hosted all kinds of visitors. But then he heard someone speaking Latin. not the stiff, old Latin used in church. This Latin was relaxed and fluent. The voice was not from a diplomat. King Charles turned toward the doorway. There he saw her, Elena. In a quiet voice, he asked his advisor who the maid was, talking with the guests. Elena was known as the quiet, low-key maid. The advisor didn't recognize her. When Elena saw the king for a moment, she thought she was in trouble. Her stomach clenched. This wasn't the kind of attention a maid wanted. She was meant to stay quiet in the background, never speak unless spoken to, and stay out of diplomatic talks. When King Charles finally entered the guest room, his face was hard to read. Everyone fell silent. Each guest nodded slightly to show respect. Elena kept her head down, her heart pounding loudly. When the king approached her, something unexpected happened. To test her, he spoke directly in Greek, calmly asking if she understood the language. Elena responded. In perfect Greek without hesitation, her voice steady. After their short chat, a long silence filled the room. The king raised an eyebrow and, with his hands behind his back, gave a small nod of approval. Then, openly and without explanation, he turned to a staff member and ordered, "Send her to my study now." The diplomats whispered among themselves. Staff members looked at each other in shock. No one recalled such an event ever happening before. Elena froze, unsure if her legs would carry her. Soon, Mrs. Winthrop arrived. She was strict, sharp-eyed, and took control fast. In minutes, Elena was led through parts of the palace she had only cleaned. She had never been into these rooms before. The king's private study was a space few servants ever saw. Now she was about to cross into that secret world. She couldn't tell why, but she knew this would change her life at Buckingham Palace forever. And she understood this was just the start. After the diplomats left, royal sources say King Charles went straight to his study. It looked like it belonged in a history book, old and full of tradition. Waiting inside was Elena. King Charles stood by the window, his hands behind his back, tense in his fine suit. He didn't look at her as she entered. His mind was still on what he had seen. How could a maid speak perfect Mandarin, Arabic, French, and Russian so easily? It seemed impossible. Still, it had just happened in front of him. When he finally turned to face her, Elena's face showed her feelings. She seemed unsure if she would be praised or sent away. The king wondered if he was about to fire her for meddling in royal affairs. Calmly, King Charles pointed to the tall-backed chair across from his desk and ordered her to sit. Elena obeyed without hesitation, sitting upright with a composed face, but her eyes remained alert. She understood what this was about. No one was called into this room for small talk. You could see the tension in Elena's stance. Neither of them spoke for a long moment. Charles studied her as if she were a puzzle piece that didn't fit into his plan. After a few minutes, he asked her directly who she was, with no room for excuses. His voice was firm, no warmth, just authority. Elena took a steadying breath, then introduced herself as Elena Morcos, the daughter of Professor Elias Morcos, a well-known linguist. A royal insider said that when she mentioned her father's name, a flicker crossed King Charles's face. It was a sign he recognized the name. Elena, her voice slightly uncertain, explained her father was a man who had worked with many languages and countries. He collaborated with governments, universities, and scholars all over the world. She grew up in a home where a different language was spoken each morning and another by night. That was the only life she knew. The king remained silent. His eyes locked onto her, unreadable but intense. He took a slow, cautious breath, his expression tight, as if holding back something. He moved to his desk, placed a hand on the back of his chair, but did not sit. Quietly, he asked where her father was now. Elena's answer was shocking and tragic. Her next words stunned everyone. "Stay with us. What happens next will surprise you." Elena shared everything. She told of the terrible things that shaped her life, the years spent being passed from one set of hands to another, like she was nothing. She spoke of being kidnapped, trafficked, pushed across borders like a shadow no one saw. North Africa, the Middle East, scattered parts of Europe. In each place, she survived by learning the language, customs, and rules she dared not break. Every word and gesture she learned was her way of staying alive. The fire flickered on King Charles's face. For the first time, he looked older than the polished man in portraits and speeches. His jaw clenched, but he didn't speak. His silence was loud enough. Elena continued. She told him how she reached this country, how forged papers gave her a new name. She said the palace was a place where she could hide. No one noticed a cleaner, especially not in a place like this. That was the rule in royal homes. She admitted she hadn't planned to stay. The palace was just a stop, a place to hide before she moved on. But something about the quiet and order, the way everything stayed in its place, touched her deeply. It was a world that made sense. When Elena finished her story, the room was silent. The weight of her words filled the air. No one moved, no one spoke. Then King Charles did something no one expected. He offered a thin, humorless smile. It was not warm but sharp, like someone who finally sees a truth they've avoided for too long. People like him rarely pay attention to those quietly working around them. The maids, drivers, faces hidden behind curtains. Maybe they should. He did not show her pity. That was not how things worked here. Instead, he spoke softly and precisely. Her story was remarkable, but inside these walls, stories didn't matter much. What mattered was how she had entered his home unnoticed. Either his staff had failed him, or she was an expert at disappearing in plain sight. Probably both. Their talk shifted to languages. Charles demanded proof. He wanted to hear it himself. Elena showed no fear. She gently corrected him. Not 9 languages, but 11. Before anyone could react, she began naming them. One by one, she listed each language. Her words flowed perfectly, sounding natural. Mandarin, Arabic, Greek, Russian, French, Italian, Persian, German, Portuguese, Spanish, and a small bit of Turkish. The room seemed to hold its breath. Charles stayed silent. His face didn't change, but the atmosphere shifted. You could feel it in your gut, even before anyone spoke. It was unspoken but clear, respect, grudging but real. That moment, King Charles made a quick, firm choice. No more floor cleaning or room tidying. He would reassign her right away. She would be under his direct command. The role didn't exist yet, but it would by tomorrow. He would call it a language advisor. Let anyone challenge it if they dared. Soon after, Charles summoned Elena again. He also called the royal advisor. He explained everything. The advisor was told to handle the papers and plans early the next day. Elena's voice was excited as she thanked the king. But what Charles said next silenced everyone. Calm and steady, he looked at her and spoke. "This is not kindness. It's a need. The palace has only one interpreter, and he's missing." The room went quiet again. Nobody argued, nobody dared. Elena left the study. The heavy doors shut behind her. But that was not the end. Prince William is already working to simplify the royal family. When King Charles passes away, what role will Elena play? Will others at Buckingham Palace accept the new king's decision? We'll cover that in the next chapter, so stay tuned. Things took a wild turn when news spread quickly through the palace. King Charles had appointed a maid as his personal language advisor. No photos, no big event, no formal announcement, just a simple note. The message went out quietly in the daily notices, addressed only to palace staff and senior advisors. One line was all it said. Elena was now the king's personal linguistic advisor, effective immediately. No explanation, no fanfare. Still, that short note hit the palace like a lightning strike. The older staff were the first to react. They couldn't openly complain because Charles was still king. But according to one palace worker, most staff weren't happy about the appointment. The message was clear. They saw it as an insult. Buckingham Palace's long history of tradition had just been ignored. The old guards felt disrespected and were not happy. The tension didn't stay with them. Word spread to the senior advisors, the real power players. These were men and women who worked their whole careers moving up in the royal world. They had studied at Oxford, spoken at major events, and advised royal families on protocol. Now they saw a maid outrank them overnight. To them, Elena's role was more than just unusual. It was a direct challenge to everything they believed in. One heated meeting with the king reached its boiling point. One senior advisor finally lost his patience. He told the king that his decision was reckless. He said it set a dangerous new rule, threatening centuries of royal tradition. The room grew tense as everyone watched Charles. True to his nature, the king never raised his voice or argued. He listened, nodded once, and responded with a single word. Noted. That was all. No speeches, no arguments. His decision was final. The quiet way he dismissed everyone made them even angrier. Below in the palace kitchens and staff quarters, gossip spread quickly. Elena had once scrubbed those same floors, peeled potatoes, and carried trays through those halls. Now she was walking alongside the king. Her old co-workers couldn't decide if they should feel proud, jealous, or just shocked. Some believed she must have done something special to earn the king's favor. Rumors flew fast. Amid all the noise, some people quietly admired her. The junior staff, the immigrants, and the overlooked workers in the hidden parts of the palace saw Elena as a symbol. If she could rise, maybe others like her could too. Still, they dared not show their feelings openly. Going against tradition in Buckingham Palace was dangerous. Elena quickly felt the change. People she once laughed with now avoided her. Conversations stopped when she entered a room. Orders became cold and stiff. She was no longer Elena, she was Miss Elena. The king's favor meant no one openly challenged her, but the looks and silence told the real story. If you think her appointment faced no opposition, prepare to be surprised. A few days after her rise, during a small diplomatic meeting, a senior advisor made a harsh comment about Elena. Charles looked up from his papers. "Some decisions can't wait," he said sharply. The room went quiet. Behind the scenes, officials started murmuring about the king's judgment. Some wondered if the king was losing control. Others questioned if Elena's rise was a sign of weak leadership. A few discreetly sent messages to Clarence House. Prince William watched closely. He thought the royal family should be smaller and more modern. He had a plan to cut unnecessary roles and make the monarchy closer to the people. Now, with his father promoting a maid to a position of influence, his plans faced new problems. Some believed William wouldn't hesitate to quietly remove Elena. Others believed he saw her value, especially if she proved useful in future diplomatic events. Having someone fluent in Mandarin, Arabic, French, Russian, and ancient Greek was rare. For now, no one knew her true worth. Charles, however, refused to step back. In private, he kept turning to Elena for advice during tough talks with foreign guests. Her insight and grasp of subtlety mattered a lot to him. Plus, her life experiences set her apart from others in the palace. That made her truly valuable in his eyes. Inside Buckingham Palace, opposition was fierce. Outside, the public's interest grew. Some praised the change as brave. Others called it reckless. Newspapers headlined stories like "Kings Turned Advisors" or "Royal Troubles." Radio shows questioned if tradition still mattered. The pressure was mounting. But amid gossip and doubt, Elena stood her ground. She didn't seek attention, nor did she hide from the gaze of stars. She moved quietly through the palace, carrying herself with dignity. Every step was watched by those eager to see her fail, and others hoping she would succeed. Charles finished with a simple message. No big speeches or public statements, just a short note for his staff. He said, "Tradition isn't about standing still. It's about moving forward with what matters and leaving behind what doesn't. Loyalty, wisdom, and courage can be found in unlikely places. Those who earn trust in this palace will keep it." The message was clear. Elena is staying, at least for now. Thanks for sticking with us. Do you think Prince William will eventually let go of Elena as part of his royal changes? Share your thoughts below. If you liked this story, like, share, and subscribe to our channel.